Hello, my name is Melissa Kavanagh. I'm the Director of Analytics at Fuel Travel, headquartered in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And today I am sharing with HSMAI's members the most recent round of our consumer sentiment study. A little bit about the study for those who haven't seen this presentation before. We send our survey to a database of North American leisure travelers. This is the 10th survey that we have done, with the first one being done at the beginning of April. On this round, we had about 800 fully completed surveys, and we've also asked several more questions to those who have traveled during the pandemic to get some feedback and further insight on those people. Asking how many people have traveled since the pandemic started, we did see more than 50% of respondents who said yes. We're at 53% on this survey round. That is a slight increase from 50% on the last survey, and a significant increase from 34%, which is who responded yes in the prior survey to that. We asked how many trips people have taken since the pandemic, and you can definitely see that one is the most popular choice at almost 45%, but that means that actually more than 50% have traveled more than once, which is a little bit surprising, given the news and all the things that we keep hearing about how awful travel is doing. More than 50% of people who have traveled have actually traveled more than once. We asked on the most recent trip, how far in advance was your reservation made? So we have up to 2 days, 3 to 7 days, 8 to 14 days, 15 to 30 days, and etc., all the way out to more than a year. And you can see these answers are pretty well diverse, or the responses are pretty well diverse. The most popular choice was 15 to 30 days, but it's only about 18% of people who chose that. If you add up the first three categories together, so up to basically 14 days before that trip, we're at 42% of responses made their decision within 14 days of their trip. So a very high percentage of people are basically making fairly last minute bookings. We asked what the reason was for the most recent trip. Overwhelmingly vacation. More than 70% chose vacation. But what I thought was very interesting is, although it's very small, we do have a 4-ish% of people that did choose business trip. And if you keep in mind that this is a leisure travel database, to see even that percentage was surprising to us. So I would speculate that if you were to choose, if you were to survey all travelers, that percentage would be a bit higher than what we're seeing here. But it was encouraging at least to see this little bit, and business travel is not dead. Did the property communicate the following to you prior to your recent stay? So we're asking about all kinds of safety protocols, and then availability of local restaurants and attractions, etc. And you can see more than 70% did say that they received information about updated cleaning protocols of the property. We're at almost 70% who said that they received information about local mask requirements. But way down at the bottom, you'll see that just about 35% said that they got information about the status of local restaurants, and even less than that about the status of local attractions and activities. If we look at this from a data comparison compared to the previous survey, the only significant change that we saw in respondents was this local mask requirement. So on this round, we're at 68% said that they received that information, and that's up from 59% in our previous survey. Now, this question was asked to everybody, regardless of whether they traveled or not, asking, what do you want to hear from properties prior to your stay? And these are the same exact categories that you just saw in the previous question. And at the top is the local mask requirements, followed very, very closely about the updated cleaning protocols. But you'll see in spot number 3, at still about 68%, they want to know the open status of local restaurants. That is a big disconnect. If we go back to the previous slide, we're only at 35% who did receive information about local restaurants versus 65% that actually want to hear about that. So always keep in mind that as a hotelier, we need to be on top of what's going on in our area. People, especially for certain vacationers, are not coming to just stay in their hotel room. They need to know what's going on outside the hotel so that they can plan accordingly. And we want to make sure that we are communicating the best that we can of all that information to our guests. We've asked this question several times now, and this is by far the question that has the most volatility in all the questions that we've been asking since we started asking. So we've asked, if your desired destination implements a mandatory face mask ordinance, how will this impact your travel plans? So on our last survey, we had a pretty evenly split pie here between decisions being unchanged. 30% said that they would be less likely to travel if there was a mask ordinance, and we're at 35% on the last survey that would be more likely to travel with a mask ordinance. Now we are at 41%, so an increase in this little sliver of pie that are more likely to travel, way down to 22% of people less likely to travel with a mask ordinance, and a slight uptick in those whose decisions would not be changed. So it has really been interesting to see the fluctuation changes in these answers survey after survey. Pick the top 3 reasons that would prevent you from staying at a hotel now. Fear of guest interactions has consistently been at the top of this list. Interestingly enough, for this survey, the answer of nothing is preventing me is at number 2, and it actually had moved into the number 2 position on our last survey. It had previously been at number 5, so it is making its way to the top. We're still at just under 30%, but it is definitely getting up there in terms of people just really not being fearful of travel, which is encouraging for sure. How likely are you to book a trip? This is a question we've asked on every round of our surveys, and this is looking at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, and then in the next year. We are currently at 55% of respondents in the maybe or higher categories within the next 30 days. We're at 60% in the next 60 days and 64% in the next 90 days. So those answering at least maybe in the next 30 days remained unchanged since our last survey. So it feels like we're really starting to kind of level out in our responses. We're, 55% this survey, 55% last survey. The very first time we asked this question, we were at 37% of people responding with at least a maybe in the next 30 days. How soon will you be willing to make the following trips? This is looking at distance from home. We are at from 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 6 hours from home, up to 10 hours, and then flying to a destination. And you can very clearly see that within 1 month, these purple bars, within 1 hour is a hot spot for sure. 2 hours wasn't too far behind, and 3 hours isn't too shabby either. 40% are ready to travel, driving up to 3 hours from their house within 1 month. While the data shifted quite a bit within that 1 month category in our last survey, from the last survey to this survey, we actually saw very little movement. So again, really starting to see these numbers starting to remain even at this point in time. But this is very important, in terms of your marketing efforts. This 1 to 3 hour drive market is super, super important. These people are the ones that can be convinced, and as we've already said, people are making, more last minute bookings. So if you can really hyper target your drive market, I think that's certainly where the sweet spot is in terms of trying to drive business at this point. This is a slide that I haven't shown. I'm not sure if I've actually shown this at all since we've started releasing these results, but this is going to be the last round of our survey for a bit because we are definitely seeing some database fatigue. So we're going to hold off a little bit on sending any more surveys until something significantly changes. But I did want to show this comparison. We have asked this on every round of our survey, and it's this word cloud asking people what the first word that they think of when considering travel now. So on our very first survey, you can see that safety is very prevalent, and scary is almost as prevalent underneath that, versus this survey where safety is still prevalent and most prevalent for sure. But you can see that, or scary is significantly smaller than it had been on our first survey. You can see that ready has popped in here, needed is here, relaxing, relaxation, fun. So certainly more positive words, whereas if you go back to the first word cloud, it's almost all negative. We have impossible, fear, unsafe, uncertainty, uncertain, caution, wait, sad. Interestingly, and my favorite words in both word clouds is nope. Those people kind of make me laugh. So I think that this does show over the course of the few months that we've been doing this, the shift in the sentiment that people are getting ready to travel. We know people are traveling. And when they are traveling, they're traveling multiple times because, you know, once you do it once, it's certainly less scary to do it again. So I hope that you're finding these survey results informative. As soon as we feel like, you know, it's time to push another one of these out, if we feel like there's a shift again, we will certainly be pushing another one of these out, but it's just going to be a little bit before we do that. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you can certainly email me at mkavanagh@fueltravel.com. You can go to fueltravel.com to see the full survey results of this study and all the previous studies before that. And until we meet again, I hope everybody is safe and healthy.